Have you eaten? Now, if I were Chinese and I were here in the United States for the first time, I would not be asking you, have you eaten, nor would I be responding to your request that I come and join you for breakfast. I would be asking you, how are you? This morning when I came in, I realized that I was already in the spirit of the class because someone came up to me and said, as we were approaching a desk, is this a line? And I said, it depends on what country you're in. How a line is defined, how waiting is defined, how soon is defined, how late is defined, I think will be one of the things that we'll discuss in the class. The seeds of the class began 40 years ago when I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Kenya and didn't understand anything I was seeing, and where I learned to appreciate the West African proverb, a stranger sees only what he knows. And then that knowledge was deepened with living and traveling abroad for a long time, and then culminating by working at International House at UC Berkeley for 20 years, where 575 students from 85 countries discover that everything from lunch to laundry to love affairs can be a source of great confusion, minefields and mind openers. It's become almost a cliche to say that in the world of globalization, we're all becoming like each other. The premise of this course is quite different. So consider this. It took radio more than 30 years to reach 60 million people, 15 years for television to reach 60 million people, and the internet 3 years to reach more than 90 million people. So the premise of the class is really, as we become closer physically, psychically, virtually, on some level we become aware of great psychic distance. How many of you have seen Chinglish? If you haven't seen it, I would recommend that you see it, because you see these extraordinary cultural disconnects between Chinese and American business people in a humorous way, but also it can have tragic consequences. Let me give you one example of a tragic consequence in the news today. How many of you have heard that there's been a great upsurge in killings of American soldiers by Afghan soldiers, presumably on the American side? Okay? Now, there's been a great study, a cross-cultural study done about this, which takes the position that much of these murders come from Americans unknowingly insulting Afghans in very deep ways. For example, blowing your nose in public. How many of you have seen American soldiers throwing toys to children out of cars? Well-meaning gestures. A great, great insult. In Norway recently, you may have read about an incident where a child was taken away, an Indian immigrant child was taken away from its parents because it was sleeping with its parents and its parents were feeding it with its hands. And this caused a huge diplomatic incident. So let me leave you with a question. And if you don't come to the class, you can ask those of you who do come to the class, what is the answer to the question? The question is, when Navajo people are moved into government housing, often the first thing they do is to rip out the toilet and remove it from the house. If you don't know the answer to that question, either come to the class or ask someone who is in the class.
Thank you, Joe. That's great.